I do get the privilege of introducing the 19th Secretary of Transportation. He's got a little bit in common with the residents here in Cheyenne, as he served in the Navy and was called to serve in the war in Afghanistan. Mr. Secretary, we are the home of the 20th Air Force, the 90th Missile Wing, the 153rd Airlift Squadron, and the 211th Army Aviation, with so many of our veterans having served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Thank you for your service, sir. I love that you served as mayor of South Bend, Indiana for 8 years, a county seat similar to us, with a population a bit larger. He was the youngest mayor of a city with a population over 100,000 in our nation. And he was nominated by President Biden and sworn in as the Secretary of Transportation on February 3rd of 2001. He leads the department's 58,000 employees, ensuring the safety and efficiency of our nation's transportation system. Mr. Secretary, welcome to Cheyenne, sir. We look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I want to, first of all, thank you, Mayor, for the warm welcome and for your leadership. I have reflected that the job of mayor has only become more demanding and more challenging since I proudly wore that title a few years ago. Although I also have reflected that it would have been nice back when I was mayor if there was $1 trillion infrastructure package going around. So hopefully we're a wind at your back in that regard, and I love hearing all of the different examples of the partnerships that you've been part of. Hearing a mayor talk about everything from passenger rail to bikeways to commercial air travel to the all-important topic of roadway safety, which is part of what brings me here today, reminds me of the importance of supporting our local leaders. So thank you again, Mayor. Director Westby, thank you for welcoming us to the state. Thanks to you and your team for the extraordinary work you're doing, both things you've been planning for more than a decade, as we talked about here, and things that were thrust upon you just a week and a half ago that your team is working so hard to deal with. Really appreciate the chance to work with you. And I want to thank the governor for reminding us of the basis for that saying that there's no such thing as a Republican bridge or a Democratic pothole, that transportation is about getting people to where they need to be. And whether it's at our offices in Washington, D.C. or out here in Wyoming, he has often reminded me of the unique and specific needs of rural communities, western communities, fast-growing communities like you have here in Wyoming. And we have sought to make sure that our policies and our ideas match the needs of this state. And I want to recognize the community and the advocates here who have worked to make sure that safety is a priority in roadway design. Third time is the charm for me and Wyoming. I pride myself on having visited just about every state since I got this job 3.5 years ago. I was all set to come to Yellowstone getting on 3 years ago now, when I got a phone call that changed my life, and the next day was holding our twins who are now getting ready to turn 3 in our arms, and that derailed that particular trip. And then I had my bags packed to come here a couple of months ago when we got the shocking call about the collapse of the bridge in Baltimore, which I'm pleased to report has finally, or I should say quickly, seen its harbor reopened. We marked that just a few days ago with Governor Moore. But I know that a shock of its own right has come to Wyoming, and again I want to acknowledge what is going on with the Teton Pass on Highway 22. I recognize the impact that has on Teton County residents, on regional commuters, and on the economy, especially knowing how many people count on that route in order to get from an affordable place to live to a place where they earn a living. And so we're committed to continuing to work with our state and local partners to assist with emergency repairs and funding, and to help develop a long-term solution to rebuild that roadway. We're here to highlight the partnership that we have with the state of Wyoming, and in particular, some of the work we're doing on roads, bridges, highways, and safety. Safety is especially important right now because for many years we have been losing about 40,000 Americans every year on our roadways, the equivalent of losing a 737 full of people every single day. We wouldn't tolerate that in our aviation system, and we shouldn't tolerate it on our roadways either. It is a crisis. And it's a crisis that disproportionately impacts certain kinds of communities, among them rural communities. Too many people in Laramie County can tell a story of someone they know or love who suffered a serious injury or lost their life after a traffic crash on US 30. But we also know that there are steps we can take to prevent it, as the mayor said, in committing this community to a vision of zero fatalities, which we have seen achieved in a handful of American communities, and we're working to grow the roster of cities that have done that, and would love nothing more than to see one of America's capital cities make it into that level of safety. But especially with more people moving in this part of the state and driving on roads like US 30, it's more important than ever. What we heard from WYDOT is that so many roads and bridges are throughout the state needing work, and so they only had enough resources to repair and preserve what was already there, even though what was also needed was improvements and upgrades to handle that increasing volume of traffic. And that's where the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act comes in. Since President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure package passed in 2021, with, I should note, a number of Republicans crossing the aisle to work with Democrats and work with our administration on it, funding is here like never before in my lifetime, not just to repave things, but to improve things, to fix things, and design things in a way that is safer and better than what we've inherited. And that's why we were so proud to deliver $15 million to help make US 30 safer, and it's why we're glad to be here to mark that good work with you. The director explained the project very well. It includes a number of safety improvements, adding turn lanes and medians, slowing down speeds in certain high crash sections, adding a traffic light at an intersection that was responsible for some of the most tragic crashes, and building a new pedestrian underpass that won't be susceptible to flooding. As mentioned before, East Cheyenne has been growing rapidly. That is what we like to call a great problem to have. It does create a lot of infrastructure challenges, and that's part of why it's so important to make it a safer place as well, to drive, to walk, to raise kids. And it's going to improve the capacity for housing and community development in East Cheyenne while still making sure that it's safe and connected to the rest of the city. In fact, you can start walking on the new pedestrian pathway here, and you can continue until you reach the other side of Cheyenne, which is a level of connectivity that we love to see. And we love that if all goes well, construction could be complete and the new road could be up and running and in use by the end of this year, which is how it ought to work. Community members brought good ideas forward. Local, state, and federal government partnered to turn those ideas into action. And it's especially important to point out these results because that hadn't been happening for too much of my lifetime, but now I'm proud to say that we've got over 50,000 projects and counting of all sizes taking place in every part of the United States, and a lot of it's coming to Wyoming. Director Westby mentioned the discretionary grants that are coming in. You got a lot to be proud of on that front because those are over and above the formula, and those are very, very competitive. Even with these historic funds we have, it is not unusual for those programs to get 5 times or even 10 times more applications in than we can say yes to. So anybody who had a hand in that should know that you have demonstrated the value of these projects to get them to the top of the list. In December, we awarded $24.4 million to the state to build an overpass, several underpasses, and fencing along 30 miles of US 189, not only to improve safety, but to preserve natural wildlife movements, the largest grant out of that wildlife crossing program in any state. That same month, we awarded over $26 million to build hundreds of new truck parking spots along I-80 in Evanston, which means safety for truck drivers and really for all drivers and a more dignified experience for those drivers we count on. The project that was mentioned with planning for I-25 and I-80. Now, I've got a soft spot for anything that touches I-80 because if you get on I-80 and you go east for about 1,100 miles and take 2 right turns, you'll come to the house I grew up in. So it's a reminder of how connected very different parts of the country are thanks to our extraordinary interstate highway system. In March, we announced $1.5 million for a technology project to help make construction work zones safer so that those workers in those vests who are making our roads safer are themselves safer. And in April, we announced almost $1 million to make physical improvements to the air traffic control tower at that Cheyenne airport that the mayor is rightly so proud of. Over the last 3 years, the administration has announced a total of $1.4 billion to modernize transportation here. And we will continue without regard to politics or party to team up to get good things done. Now, as I'm sure the mayor will appreciate, the one thing that someone like me enjoys even more than a groundbreaking or seeing dirt moving is ribbon cutting. So I hope you'll invite me as some of these projects are completed, and maybe one day we'll get to ride a bike down that great multi-use path you're constructing. In the meantime, again, I just want to encourage you to keep up the good work and let you know that this administration and our department are eager, whether it is in response to an emergency or whether it is with regard to a long-sought, decades-long vision. We are here at your side to get this good work done. Thanks very much for the chance to join me.